The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to TechGig webinar series, our endeavor to empower techies. We believe that the sharing of knowledge is the key to enhance our skills and grow us as professionals. With this principle in mind, we have initiated a series of webinars conducted by industry experts to give you all a crisp insight of various domains. The topic of today's session is Informatica PowerCenter Agile Data Integration Tool. Our guest speaker today is Indra Bhushan, who is a senior BDIW architect at Virtusa Corporation. He is an MCA Computer Science with 15 plus business intelligence and data warehousing experience, delivering extensive business solutions and products including DWH BI, schema design and architecture, dimensional and metadata modeling, ETL and OLAP design and development, software delivery, and project management with pre-sales. He also has an exceptional problem-solving skills in complex, highly integrated data warehousing and BI environments, and also has a proven ability to build strong relationships with clients and teams using negotiating talent, persuasion, and demonstrated commitment. He is a great problem solver with a passion for simplifying and streamlining business processes using technology transparent to the business. So without further delay, I introduce you all to our guest speaker. Over to you, Indra.
Thank you, Vishal. It is an immense pleasure for me to come over and take a chance to speak something for the people who are being interested to know what is Informatica and how it's being important. So first of all, thanks a lot everybody to join in a webinar session here, and I'll try to give a level best information around the Informatica, what is Informatica, a couple of more techniques and technology which Informatica being used over the period up till now. We'll definitely have a good session altogether in for the concepts. I'll talk about a bit of myself before starting webinar, and I'll set the expectation so that people can ask questions post of the seminar ends. And definitely we have a good, great session. That's the expectation. So once again, thanks a lot for people who are joining in the webinar, and let's be very open and have an interaction session with Informatica here. So let's talk about management in Informatica PowerCenter. That would be the concept here. So let me speak about myself, as Vishal has already introduced me, and that I'm there in industry for last 15 years. Primarily, I'm a gold medalist MCA in 2001. Basically, I do a data warehousing and business intelligence, and the area which I cover is pre-sales, consulting, delivery management, and definitely the architecture exposure. I primarily work for a couple of environments, from support to development to consulting or anything a new solutioning architecture point of view. I normally work for a specific expertise. It may be for a business intelligence, it may be for schema designing, it comes from modeling as well. Sometimes it comes to a project management or delivery management. So I've been there in industry as a delivery manager, a couple of companies. And if you talk about data and reporting management, then definitely one of the important aspects when you come to a data is called data governance, as one of the part of my career so far. So I'll not take much time and give you a brief of a little more about me. So company which I work for is Nuclear Software, RBS, SAS, Gensar, Wipro Technologies, Central, HSBC, Hewlett, Oracle, and lastly the Virtusa Consulting USA, which is New York, and I work for Disney, resorts, and India in Hyderabad. So thank you very much for giving me my, kind of a brief information. And without any further delay, let's get into the topic. Okay. So the webinar topics today would be Informatica PowerCenter and overview. We'll talk about how error handling is happening in Informatica as a PowerCenter. So Informatica is a company. We'll talk about more in detail in further slides. Then Informatica domain and repository management, Informatica recovery concepts, and Informatica log management. So this is what we'll cover in this today's session. I'll try to get more or less the concepts, the understanding, what we can do and what we can achieve out of it. And I would probably give you one or two practical scenarios as and when it comes across. So let's start with the Informatica PowerCenter and overview. I'm talking about version 9. So what are the objectives? When you finish this module, what you should be able to understand: what is Informatica, what are the suite of the products, how many products they have, how do we do error handling of in Informatica if it comes to error handling, what is the Informatica domain and repository management, and what is repository, to be very honest. There are people who come from a data warehouse background in the webinar, but there will be people coming from a .NET, Java, or maybe some other background which is not at all, may not be understanding what is repository, what is metadata, perfectly something new for them here. The next we talk about Informatica recovery concepts. So you must be knowing it. If there's something failure happens, how Informatica you can recover those failures. Then we also talk about and you will be understanding a PowerCenter log management. So let's talk about the first topic where we talk about what is Informatica. So to be very honest, Informatica is a product company. As must have known that there is this company is being founded in 1993, and then the revenue goes up to 2012 was 811.6 million. So over there 7-8 years, the percentage growth is going to be 17 to 80% per year. An employer, if you say today, it can be more than 5,000, whereas 2012 it was 2810 plus. If you say partners, so let's be very specific. Who are the partners? The partners can be an SI, which is a system integrator. It can be OEM, or it can be on-demand leaders, or it can be a training partner in industry like us. And then their customers. They have brilliant customers across the 82 countries. More than 500, 5,000 customers are there altogether. And it's been growing every day by day. It's not that being stopped. They've been coming with so many new products. They're also coming in cloud. We'll talk about a little later in this. Okay. Let's talk about a bit more from a growing perspective. So you can see that 2005 is basically, they have, exactly the growing from 2005 to 2012 is being exponential. The growing is very fast. Informatica as a tool is pretty good as a PowerCenter. So if you talk about Informatica products and their functionality, there's a range of products that are already been coming in, and they're being properly, and the portfolio is the focus going to be a data integration and integration of a data from a various source systems. So what are the products they're into? They're into data integration and ETL. They're into information lifecycle management. They're into complex event processing, data masking, data quality, replication, virtualization, master data management, and ultra messaging. And the current version industry usage is 9.6. So yes, if you ask me why we're talking these all focused, and let's talk about more specific in individual concepts little more, whereas you can understand why do we need this Informatica and what is the plus point if you're using Informatica PowerCenter. So here is basically a kind of a chart and a complex and a simple way of looking things from Informatica family or a background of the product systems. So Informatica, as I said, today Informatica being very popular, and they're coming in the cloud data integration concepts. They have a product based on cloud itself. So your data on the cloud is being automatically done the ETL then and there, sitting on the cloud data. We got a data quality as a product, so there would be data profiling, and you're making a quality of data. So production data maybe basically coming in more minus, plus, any extra data which is illogical. So you need to make them a logical data with the data quality. You got event processing comes across. You have a master data management. So we'll talk about more in detail. You got a B2B exchange, and then you have enterprise data integration and ultra messaging. And definitely, not less application ILM, which is lifecycle management. So let's talk about more specific here. So when we talk about a product and their families, any user, any project, any environment, that's Informatica platform. Now, when you talk about any user, who are the users? Why do we need that? And who probably can be the best users for this? So if you talk about a business, you talk about an analyst, an architect, developer, or data stewards. So those can be a user, a person who being doing a business end user who does not have a technical knowledge at all, but they want to use the data and they want to integrate them together. So they would be a user. An analyst, when the data comes across, they want to do some analysis out of the existing data or the main data. When it comes to architects, so there are architects who do a designing and solution architecture. So data is very important role plays in their architecture at all. So until unless they probably do something well, It's always to understand, if you say, okay, what are the architect people are being using data and what is the purpose behind, you need to have those data up and running. So an architect really needs those data, because I'm an architect, I understand, or we understand, that when we need a data, what are the solutioning we come across. And when you say there would be an output data, so how do we plan a solution which we achieves the actual required data? Coming back to developer, so developer is actual developer who has a technical background, and basically they know how to make data or databases with the help of Informatica to get the right solutioning for reporting perspective or analytical perspective. It comes to data steward. Data steward, basically he knows what is the data, kind of a data he has. For example, he understands what is the master data, what are the transaction data, what are the file data systems comes across, how's the legacy data coming in. So a data steward define the data, he understands what is the data family. So definitely these are the users. If you come to a project, if you talk about as any project, so which are the projects kind of industry? There would be analytics product or a project where you want a data coming in. So we can do an analytics products, application to application. So you have a SAP BI or SAP, you have a, let's say, SCM, supply chain management, and you have a BI application coming across. So those application, a data can transfer one to another application. For example, finance to sales. So if you're selling one product, you have a finance, you have a sales. So end of the day, your CIO or CTO or a CEO comes to know and wanted to know how many sales has happened, who are the products, who are the best 5 customers whom I'm selling to, what are the scope and which are the area we can still sell them. So those two applications can talk to each other with the help of Informatica data management, a data integration tool. Next is gonna be business to business. So as I mentioned, there will be business to business. So a lot of business understand one business more. To understand and get the data flow is very important. That's what again your business to business comes across. There would be data migration. So at time you have a Oracle version 7 or 8 and you want to use to Oracle 11G, or you want to migrate SQL Server or any other databases. Or you also have a lower version to an upper version. So those migration comes across where Informatica comes in place. So just to remind you once again, Informatica is not a product. Informatica is only a company. Informatica Corporation. We'll get to know more the product series soon. Then we have a data quality, as already mentioned before. Once you get the actual practical data, even the production, there are a lot of people who write new space Delhi, new dot Delhi, or there people write new Delhi, as somebody writes Delhi as well. So if you do actual search, you'll get individual search for one record. In data quality, there's a concept called data profiling. Data profiling basically combine them all the different similar family and create one text where you can do a search and get all the records together. So that's the benefit. So what you're doing is you're making your quality data. The qualitative data helps you to give your search more better. So that's the benefit of a data quality. Next, I would say big data. So this is a kind of a similar data what we're talking about today, but the only thing is they have a variety, velocity, are very different, and the volume is very different. It's going to be very larger volume. It's a distributed application comes across, and they have running storing data in file system, SDFS. They call Hadoop file system, distributed file system. So those have data coming in. So to get your data in big data or a Hadoop, what do you need is you need a tool which really loads the data which is in a higher volume, where Informatica comes in place. Next kind of project would be your master data management project. So what is master data management? I'll give you a very simple example. If you have a product code which is a mouse M001 which is running in Delhi, whereas a Dell mouse, another branch which is in Mumbai, they write MOUSC001. But the Dell mouse has the same mouse and their definition. But there's 2 different product code are running in 2 different business. They're selling, their accountants, everything's different. But the one umbrella, the product is same, and the product code from the company comes same. The people who are managing their data in 2 different codes, what MDM comes is they map those codes, create one single code, so that anybody who's coming newly using mouse accountancy or mouse selling, they'll use the new interchange code. or you say a new code which is being already mapped. Bhushan A and then Indra.Bhushan. So you might have two different records, but the customer is same. So the MDM will help you to make your data as a single version of truth and a single data. Information lifecycle management. So there would be a management flow here. So it's a workflow. So one time, for example, I'll give you one example. You have one physical support system. So if you call, let's say you're calling Airtel or you're calling somewhere else, the call center people pick the phone, they talk to you. So what happens? Those data entered in call center. Then it goes to the back office. Then it goes to the database management guys. Then it goes to data warehouse, and finally it published to number of calls in their books, yearly or quarterly. So it's a complete information life cycle. So one information kept at one place and was flowing, keep flowing till end of the sessions. Okay, now let's talk about any environment. What are the environment as today or tomorrow, and what are the environment can really used in? So one environment like department, so there will be different departments coming in. So sales, finance are using in. Now there's an enterprise. That company, one enterprise, one tool, one project, and one product. So anything they want to make it a uniform across the departments, which would be enterprise. As already rightly mentioned, cloud is one of the biggest and upcoming technology still people are using in. So Informatica also there in the cloud, which you can do the ETL. And when you say Hadoop, Hadoop is going to be a kind of a process and a project, especially for a big data management. So people using for a larger data, which is in a kind of the loading and in a bigger sound, media, social media data there, which is in a larger in volumes. And definitely least but not the last is called embedded data, which is a legacy data system kind of environment. Moving on. So let's talk about the product we already specifically said. PowerCenter is one of the integration tool, which is very important for data integration platform, which basically takes all the data from a different source system and then put it in one place for analysis, for governance, for quality and reporting perspective. So that's Informatica PowerCenter. Now information lifecycle management, I've already did mention this. So information lifecycle management software empowers your IT organization for cost effectively handle data growth safely and retire legacy systems and application. It helps you to optimize your data management and protect your sensitive data. So there would be a lot of data where you want to protect them. So this information lifecycle at different stages help you to do that. Complex event processing. So there would be a complex data, but that is basically run by a business engine, which is called a root point. That software really helps you to deliver your robust data, which is a complex event processing. It's kind of a real-time alert, which really prevent to get your smaller data and faster, efficient, and competitive. So that's the way of a complex event processing. Okay, one of the important topic, which is every people aware, and I'll tell you a right example of data masking. So Informatica data masking products, basically they're doing a dynamically mask-sensitive production from authorized, unauthorized access. So what is happening is, for example, there's a bank and you're the vendor from a company like a TCS, Wipro or any other company you're coming from, or let's say ABC company. I said, look, Mr. Customer, Mr. Bank, I can help you to get your data in a different way, and this is what we can give you, analytical software. Or you being a product company, you need to have actual real-time production data to show them your product, despite you use your sample product. So you go to the bank and say, Mr. Bank, can you provide us your data which we can use it in our product and give you the actual presentation of what my product can do and how you can do a benefit of the products. In that scenario, bank says, look, Mr. Vendor, I probably cannot give you, it's not convenience, confidentiality data, I cannot give you outside of my bank network, and you cannot log in your product to your network, because unless we don't buy, we don't introduce you our network. So a vendor side, there's a problem, he can't show the actual scenario, actual data to their product and their capabilities. And as a bank side, there's a problem, they can't show the customers information like the customer's phone number and all. Those are complete confidential. And also for that matter, a customer has how much saving into the banks. That's against the law. That's in India, there's RBI, Reserve Bank of India, that has a norm. You can't show your customers' information very publicly. So what happened? Informatica come in place and say, look, man, I can help you. Let's do a data masking on that. So if you're writing, let's say customer interruption, you write A, that's all. And we talk about all the information being already masked. So what you do, you create a mask. For a normal masking, what you have the original face and you have a mask above than that. So the actual face you cannot see. Similar like a data, you cannot see the actual name. If I A, B, B, C, nobody knows what is A, B, B, C. But if I see being written interruption, people will know, oh, this is somebody's customer's information are showing. So people lose faith. So the people got to know, okay, my information being shown on some certain webinar or seminar, or he's selling a product which our information, then he'll come back and show the customer. Say, boss, I cannot give you my information. Why are you showing our customer, our information to the customer in public? So they can, that's illegal and unauthorized. So that's what the data masking coming in place. I hope I'm trying to give you a physical and kind of industry experience, which will really help you to understand more better. The next is data quality. As I said, data quality really provides to clean, high quality data, regardless of size, format, platform, technology, to any other business. Basically, it helps you to validate and improve your information address. So data profiling, cleansing, this is what helps your data governance practice also, which makes your data as a quality. Next is data application. So data application is a process where doing a kind of, you have a production server and you are doing a copy of the production server. For example, you have an Airways. So what you do, I have an experience in Qantas Airways in Australia, where we have to replicate the data, which a reservation system attached with that. Every 2 hours, we get the production data, that how many reservation is done, how many cancellation is done, so that I can do the routing of the plane and I can arrange how many people are coming in the plane and what is the overall cost to run that plane and business. So data application comes in place. So it's basically kind of a real-time application software which is highly scalable, reliable, non-disruptive performance and operational structure. So you have a production, it will not hamper the production. At certain intervals, you can get your replica done. It's going to be a copy of your production server. The next is very important, concept called data virtualization. So data virtualization, basically what happens, they do not load physical data from your source to your target. So what they do is they can take all the various integration from a different business source systems. They do all the kind of possible calculations, but they are not loading the data and they provide directly to the report from in-memory systems. So data virtualization is one of the layers which are used for a federation of the data. So Informatica Data Service provides a single scalable architecture which provides both. It provides a data integration and federation data both, creating a data virtualization layer that really hides and handles the complexity of the accessing underlying data sources. That means the data coming from source systems, you are using them at, you're doing a calculation on top of that, you're performing a KPI, you are not loading the data, but you're publishing the reports. The next topic is MDM. As we already discussed, master data management is basically, helps you to get your consolidation and reusable business critical data, also known as a master data. Now, ultra messaging basically is more like a messaging family. So it's basically a low latency messaging middleware product, which is very high 24/7 reliability. It is basically more from a messaging point of view. So if you say Informatica resources, where all you can get all information requirement, and if you want to know more from information of the Informatica, you can have Informatica corporate website, university, customer portal, product documentation, knowledge base, technical support, and definitely a certification. So if you talk about what is PowerCenter, so PowerCenter is basically a kind of a tool for integration, which really allows companies or any government, any size, I would say, to discover and integrate them from a data source to a target, or from a virtual to the actual data. It is known as an ETL tool called extract, transform, and load. Just to be specific, extract, that we are reading data from source, transform that you've been transforming from source data to a business logical data, and loading is basically to load a target data warehouse. See, the main advantage is gonna be very robustness. It can be Windows and Unix based. Both version comes across. So PowerCenter can read variety of source systems across the industry so far. It can read SAP data also. Going forward, the couple of XML data can be also read. The main advantage we talk about, it's very robust and is basically, as I said, in both Windows and Unix environment. So any environment really runs on. It is a highly performant kind of a product and really easy to maintain, and this administration is very simple. It's very simple. It's so simple, I would say. So the version history, currently we're saying 9.6.1, which is HF called Hotfix 2, as February 2015 people have launched in. Okay, so for Informatica, if you want to know more about that, please go for informatica.com, which is a professional and official site of Informatica. So Informatica is a SOA, which is called a SOA, Service Oriented Architecture. Is basically all the group of services which really helps to communicate to each other, which is a kind of process which involves either a simple data processing or any complex one. So they are being used for more services coordinating to each other activities, which really helps you to work as a services rather than a processes. So if you ask what is the aim, so basically it's basically Informatica's aim to provide you high and scalability. That's most important when you do a data in a volume load in your tetrabytes or gigabytes and so on in a short span of time. So the approach is re-engineering. Underlying architecture has been more easy because it's a service based. So that's the reason it's very easy. So this is what is in a single unified architecture of Informatica. So you can see here, these are the providers. So XML, packaged application, relational, and mainframe. So these are the source system. So here, PowerCenter as the tool. So they got an administrator, and these are the services: repository services, integration services, repository. If you talk about a client, you got a designer and manage and monitor. So designer is a plane where you can design the maps, manage where you can create your maps to run, and monitor where you can actually see how the maps is running, as failing or how much data is loading. And consumers are again a kind of output. So that was from the first topic. Now we're moving to the second topic, how the error handling is happening in Informatica. So error handling is one of the most important components in data warehousing. When you talk about any project, what are the error comes, how you can resolve those errors, and how you can proceed that. So if you know how to do a troubleshooting and error handling, you are being a good programmer or developer or a good engineer, I would say. So when we start a data warehouse, a data integration project, business user comes up with this set of expectation to handle ETL process. Let's talk about how you can do the user-defined error. So in Informatica, there's a two type of ETL process. It can be data error and the process error. So what are the data error? So data error, basically we use row error handling features. The error are captured into the error tables, which we can handle and see that later on. Also, you can publish a report. At time, what happens? People would love to know how many errors are there, what are the errors, and where the errors are. So you can keep it in one table and you can use them up. Okay, that's the data error. Now another is called process errors. There would be a processing error. It can be sent it by email, and you can notify event of the session failure. So if the failure happens, your ETL support team should get an email say that team, there's a failure happens, kindly rectify them. So those are process errors. Let's get into more Informatica functions to be used. At times there would be Informatica user-defined functions which capture the logic. So there's a error function and abort function. So error function basically is usage more like a session logs, and they write them in error log tables, and you can configure them in a session as well. Whereas abort talks about if the error is happening and you're still running the show, you can just abort them and you can stop the error or the map and it should come out. So you can see this is one of the screen where the task is being written, where you can simply define them the kind of a error log. So you can see that error log, and it's basically coming in a data connection. So what are the error tables? So there will be Informatica which gives you four kind of a table where the error comes across, and those tables are as follows. ETL data, then MSG, session and transaction. So data, message, session and transaction. So data stores data about a transaction, row error and its corresponding source row. Whichever row it has an issue. It stores metadata, data about error and error message. It talks about the actual message. So what is the error? It gives you detailed information of the message. What is the error? Now it stores metadata about session. Session talks about which is the session, session ID, at time, what time, start time, end time, user ID, right? All the session informations. Then you have a transaction. So it stores metadata about source and transformation port when the error occurs. So what happens? It also talks about where is the error. So which port? Means port is basically a field. Which data field there is an error. So it show you the transaction error. Okay. So you can see here, this is a kind of a SQL when you can get your SQL of your information from the error table. So you can publish all the errors, the folder name, the workflow name, the session name, the source data and the error message. So what are living there from the certain tables with certain joins and conditions where you can see what are the errors coming from and you can tackle them. You can rectify them if it is easier, or you can simply go back and see your map and figure out what is the error. Okay. The next topic we're talking about is Informatica domain and repository management. I will not be very fast. I'll go a little slow if I'm a little fast. So let's talk about an Informatica PowerCenter architecture, which is the most important part here when you want to understand what is Informatica PowerCenter. So Informatica is a product company. PowerCenter is a product for data integration. So they got a server component, they got a client component. So here you can see this is a login where you're actually doing a login to the server, and here you can see RDWM. R stands for repository manager, D stands for designer, W stands for workflow manager, M stands for workflow monitor. So these are the 4 client tools available when you're using an Informatica PowerCenter, and then you also have integration services, repository services talking to your repository. So that we'll talk about a little later in detail. So as already mentioned, you have a PowerCenter Administration Console, which is a browser based. This is a web based, a kind of a browser based where you can log in and do your administration work, and whereas these all are Windows component based. Repository, then designer and manager and monitor. So server component, as was discussed, there will be repository services, integration services, BW services and web services. So repository services is manage a repository, which any insert happens into the repository tables, it will manage that. Integration basically runs your session and workflow, that is a server. So when you create your integration map, ETL map, this will help you to run them. This is specific to SAP BW and this is for web services. Okay. This is very interesting topic, whereas we get to know what are the overall architecture of a PowerCenter. So here you can see this is a domain. You got integration services, you got a repository services, you got a repository as a database which can connect with a native server. Then you have a metadata domain, right? Then you got a clients which is talking from a TCP IP, which is all the PowerCenter clients. Then you got a source system connecting from ODBC or any native drives or any APIs, whereas target defense again connecting by ODBC. So what is a domain actually? If you say what are the domain, if you say this is a domain. So domain is a logical collection of sets of nodes or a server. So what are the nodes? Nodes are normal PC, a personal computer or a server. So PowerCenter domain is this fundamental administrative unit of PowerCenter. A domain can be single PowerCenter installation which can consist multiple PowerCenter installation. So what are the salient features? A node is a logical representation of a physical machine. A physical attribute such as a host name and port number should be there when you're configuring a domain name, to be very honest. Each node runs a single service manager and responsible for application and a core services. A node can be also a gateway node, which really actually talks about communication others. So I'll show you a little bit more. So what are the gateway node? A gateway node is a node where all services can meet to run. They communicate to each other basically. So primary function gateway node is to route all services requests from PowerCenter client and to the other available node. So I'll show you here. So you can see this is a gateway node, which is an overall node, and you can say sales node, manufacturing node, and finance node. So this is overall enterprise DW domain of Informatica server, whereas you have gateway node. We can see that when you log in, these all are talking to a gateway node. Now gateway node is basically communicating with manufacturing, sales and finance node. So those nodes are physical computer. So domain is one server. The gateway node routes requests from clients and appropriate nodes and services. The client talks to the gateway and also the administrator services. The nodes and services at domain can be centrally administered using the PowerCenter administration console. So those administration can be done in this console. Okay. How different component of PowerCenter interacts? So as you can see here, PowerCenter client is there. So all the clients have been communicating to the domain, whereas this domain communicates to repository manager and the administration can be handled by administrative console. And then you have your target and source. So your source and your target. So what is the repository as a management? What a repository are done? So repository is a generic term which is a container or a room or something where you can store a kind of information. So like a box, you're storing a couple of items there, like a keys or something like that. So Informatica repository is a set of database tables where Informatica stores its metadata, and I believe you must be knowing a metadata. Metadata is a data about data. For example, table name, column size for a table, not the actual data. So metadata is the data that describes other data, more specifically data about data. That's a technical, I would say definition. So repository also keeps the data about the different types of object, like mapping, what are the name of the mapping, what are the transformation, which folder, what are the connection, and the privileges as well. Now when you say repository also, permission also being used for a repository backup. You can do export and import as well, one of them here. So this is more like for an administrative perspective. So you cannot design anything here, but whatever you design, it comes and stores here as a metadata information. Talk to the next topic, Informatica recovery concept now. So what is a recovery? Can you see here? So you can see Informatica recovery concept. You have a workflow configuration recovery and session recovery. So Informatica, if any failure happens, what you do, how you recover those data. For example, you're doing a credit from the net banking and Informatica is using, so debit has happened, credit is not happened, then you're losing your money. So there would be workflow recovery. Workflow recovery allows you to continue process with workflow task for any point of interruption, wherever you get interrupt. So during the workflow recovery process, integration servers access workflow state and stored into the memory and or disk of the recovery configuration. So when you run the actual ETL map, integration services are basically the stage they stored into the disk or the memory. So there would be three different kind of workflow. One is going to be workflow configuration for recovery, the configuration, and the second configuration session and task configuration for recovery. Third is recovery with the workflow from failure. So this is three kind of a configuration you do for a recovery point of view. So as you can see, Informatica recovery concepts. So workflow configuration for recovery, you can see here, this is what you're doing, you're doing a recovery configuration, you're checking up this. So this comes in your workflow property, and whereas you enable them workflow recovery for integration services, workflow state, operation shared location. It is basically, they'll be storing them in this shared location altogether. So whenever it terminates, it basically can interrupt and can really start from there. So the first is like configuration doing, it's like you can see here suspend. You can also send an email, when you configure a workflow, that whenever suspend is happened or any error takes place, you can send an email to the specific one, to any admin or a support team, which get to know what are the email is in failure. So if the workflow is not able to recover automatically, the failure maximum allowed number of attempts. So it is also said how many number of attempts it can be accessed, 5 times, 10 times, 20 times, and so on. The next is basically recovery strategy. So what you do is session and task configuration for recovery. So what you do is you can have three different ways. when the integration services recovers a workflow, the recover takes task based on the recovery strategy. So these are the strategy again you can set up with the task. Restart task, fail task, and continue workflow. So let's say one flow has 4 different tasks, 1 and 2 failure, so that third flow can really run. Resume the task, checkpoint from the recovery. So you can make a checkpoint and then you can use it for the resume recovery later on. So what are restart? The restart basically all the type of workflow there. So integration services can restart from there itself. Fail task and continue workflow. As already mentioned, you can use 1 or 2 things have failed and you can continue the other one. Resume from the checkpoint. So the recovery strategy is only available on the session task. The integration service saves the task and state, and they basically maintain target recovery tables, whereas they can resume there. So they're putting a check 1, check 2, check 3, check 4, and you say check 2, checkpoint 2. So it will start from 2. So the concept we talk about the last one, recovery from work from failure. So it can be automatically, can be manual. So you can have automatically high, if you have a high level availability license with Informatica, the automatically configuration being done and the recovery process can be done by the configuration automatically. Whereas if you don't have a license, you still can do the recovery manually, which I can show you later on the screen. So so you can see this. So if you say recovery, it can be written a recover workflow, continue processing the workflow from the point of interruption, recover task. So there would be a task you can recover. You can also recover a workflow from a task. So here is a manual process where you can do individually recovering of your failure happens in case. Okay. So here we're coming to the last topic, which is a PowerCenter log management here. So we talk about a log. So what is log? It's basically kind of a traceability data. How, what, when, who. So those things come as a log. Log as a kind of a tracing. So you're storing those information. So workflow can be either recovered automatically. So this we already spoken altogether. So let's talk about more from log management. So they have 2 kind of logs. One is a session log and a workflow log. So session talks about more from a session error and a log statistics kind of information. So any error happens, whether it's an error or a success, in both of the case logs generates the file, where it talks about who, when, what time is starting, what is the end time, what is the transformation being used, which is the source system, what are the target system, all kind of information are stored in logs. Then there would be a workflow logs. So it has a workflow processing and workflow errors kind of logs available. So what happened when you say, a kind of log workflow initiated? So integration services writes a binary log file on the node. It sends the information about session workflow to the log manager. So there will be a log manager who is being responsible to writing the logs. So log manager basically stores all the workflow and session into the domain configuration database. So there would be a database for the domain. When you install the Informatica, the first thing is the domain configurations. So domain configuration kind of a repository, a database, it is automatically stored there. And it retrieves the information from there itself. So when you view section of workflow in the log event window, the log manager retrieves information from the configured database to determine location from session or workflow logs. As I already mentioned, so all the data is being stored in the configuration database and it retrieves from there. Also, the log manager dispatcher is the log agent which retrieves a log event or from each nodes if it has a multiple nodes altogether. So when a workflow is invoked, integration services creates the following output files. So they create a couple of files here. They create a workflow log file, session log file, session detail, and reject file. So the integration service provider create a workflow log, when workflow runs. It writes the workflow such as initialization of processes, task information, error accounted, and so on. So this is a workflow base, whereas this is a session base. Here it talks about more from a session point of view. So what are the session initiated, what are the validation is taken pair, or the creation of SQL command, writing, loading a data, those all stuff. So this detail has more, one level further detail to get more transaction level data. What are the transformation? What is happening in transformation? How much data being loaded? Where is got failure? And then the reject file is definitely being used for a reject. So each target will have a reject file, containing the number of rejected rows. For example, if you're loading 1,000 data from source and you loaded only 990 data in target, so 10 records will be stored in your rejected files. So when a workflow is invoked, they create a couple of more, files. They also create a kind of error log file. Then have recovery tables files. They got an integrator file and cache files. So there are a couple of people also created a a kind of a recovery table. So you saw the other thing is a recovery log file. You also have a table. So there would be tables created on that, and where you have all the errors coming in and all the recovery things comes across. So you got an integration file. So a lot of time the indicator file talks about which row has the error. It gives you the mark for insert, update, and delete or a rejection. And very important file is a cache file. So when you use a kind of integration server, create a memory cache. So cache is a temporary, as you know, it creates a cache file, especially when you go for a transformation like aggregator. Now what are transformations? Transformation is a business logic which basically reform source to target. In between, they change the logic. So for example, you're doing aggregator. So you have 5 different employees having salaries. So if you want to know what is the total salary I have given to 5 different employees or a total employees, so aggregator is summing them up. So those called transformation. So when you do aggregator, joiner, rank, lookup, and lookup is the bigger one. Let me tell you, this is the biggest one I would say. Sorter and XML target. So the cache file will be created. So there would be tracing level. So what is a tracing level? Tracing level gives you kind of detailed information when you go for an error. So it can configure at certain level where you want to go for, when you say tracing level none, applicable only session level, and integration server uses the tracing level, configure the mapping. It gives you very information. When you say TERS, TERS is basically error message, notification, rejected data. If you go to a normal, it gives you a little more detail, talks about summarized session result, but not level of the individual rows. When you go to verbose initialization, in addition to the normal tracing, integration servers also talks about additional information like initializing details like index, data files, and transformation statistics. And when you go to verbose data, this is the maximum level of the data where it has huge information of what kind of a data is being truncated, how many precisions being used, like what are the transformation statistics are being used. So it talks about integration service writes all the data from a block to a process transformation. So this is a kind of a level of your detail you want to write in your log files on a table. So you can see it's a kind of a logs. You can see here it talks about date, time, what folder. So kind of a log. This is a kind of one of the parameter test file. This is going to be actual. This is the output file we created, but this is the Informatica actual log management. You can see that log event for workflow. So here is the kind of tracing. So you can see that severity. This is the timestamp, which is node, and the message code and the message detail. So it gives you more detail. Okay. So that's all from my side. I think probably this is what I'm looking for from the current, all overall. And I hope I've not taken much time. And my speech should be okay. Over to Vishal. Thank you, Vishal.
Thanks for the insightful presentation. Let's quickly take up the questions now. Please read out the questions and their answers so that all our users may listen to the commendable insights.
Yeah. Okay, there's a question for analytics. Open source product available, and hence the market of product companies are probably going down. Hence, if this is just roadmap for the same, DWH is parasite on OLTP quality and OLTP responsibility, but not data warehouse. Okay, well, when it comes to a kind of a OLTP system, wherever you have your production data, you definitely wanted to have to make your data correct. So it's very important that any data warehouse you're coming in for a perspective of data warehousing and reporting, and also depends what kind of output you're looking in terms of analytical product, in terms of analysis, in terms of statistics. It can be operational BI, it can be MIS. So it is not the parasite, it basically gives you an opportunity open. So it's not needed that you create a data warehouse for your reporting. Who said that? It's not important. So if you say Ralph Kimball, he talks about a data mart directly, he never talks about data warehouse. So let's not get into traditional stuff. If you have a short of money or the cost you are very less, the time is very less, let's straightforward go to a data mart, create your marts and you publish your reports. Right. And when you're saying a lot of open source are coming, yes, Talent is one of them doing well, but Talent has other limitation. Informatica more good in cloud as well. Whereas if you talk about open source has a challenges also, but if you talk about a cost wise, if you know Informatica specifically, you do a lot of integration, partitioning, parallel processing, so many other stuffs. And I would say every product has pros and cons. Does it answer your question, I believe? Next question, please. Okay, so Shriram asked me, how can I maintain error handling in tables instead of going a workflow monitor? Well, Shriram, we have to configure them as I've already shown you. There would be a database connectivity with the tables, so you can configure the tables while installation. Sorry, not exactly. You can do that for installation as well because the configuration domain is happening. Also from a workflow and a session perspective. So you can do both of the ways. You can have those error data, and then you can do, as already shown you, the SQL. You can simply run them up. PM asking what to know PDO limitation. So as of now, to be very honest, I have not come through any scenario where I have not completed anything, any scenario, for example, a multi-threading or a kind of a partitioning. As of now, I've been doing it so far, and I have not seen any limitations in a better way. Now they are also in Unix, so people who don't know much about Windows, they are preferably go Unix. I'm okay with that, and the people are okay with that. So PM saying GWH is parasite on OLTP, so data quality is OLTP responsible but not the GWH. No, I would say completely not, because OLTP is a production data. For example, you're doing a sales entry, or let's say you're doing a bank opening form. So when you write bank opening form, you're writing your address in a different way, but the person who's entering a data do a lot of mistakes in entering a data. But when you go for a publishing those analytical report, you don't need those unwanted information. So you want an stream information. So your data warehouse data quality is based on your data warehouse. So data quality is always after data being loading. PM asks, what is the use of data virtualization? Well, if you do not want to load data from source to target and you want to do a federation, so it's a data federation. So there would be a medium layer which people are using it from a binary system to some specific table, temporary table, which is in memory also, and you do not want to physically load data from one to target. So that's where the data virtualization comes in place.
Thanks, Indra. It was indeed a great session. I would like to thank you all our participants for their support in making this webinar a success. The recording of the webinar will be available on techgig.com very soon. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Vishal and the team. Have a nice day ahead.
Thank you.